Hello, and welcome back to Baby Elias's Stories. We now return to Eve by Iris Johansen. The final chapter, chapter 19. Black's made contact, Catherine said curtly as she hung up from talking to Eve. He's turned Kara loose on the hill at the north tip of the lake, and he's staging some kind of macabre hunt. Eve and Gallo are on their way. And so are we. Joe stopped and gazed at the hill looming over the lake. Black and Kara are approaching the hill from the east. Follow them on that route, and we risk an ambush. We need to climb the hill from the west slope and try to surprise Black. But we can't circle the lake and get on the other side of the hill. It would take too much time. No, we can't do that. He gave her his gun and ammunition, but kept his knife. We split up. What? He moved down the bank and took off his boots and shirt. I swim across the lake and go up the hill from the west side. You follow Black along the east route. One of us should be able to pick him off. Okay, but I'm calling Eve and telling her I'm on my way to join them. I can help them zero in on Black if I can pick up that tower signal. She hesitated. The lake's pretty wide. I couldn't swim that distance. Can you make it? Come on. I was a seal. I live on a lake. He jumped into the lake and gasped. Cold. He started stroking. Hell yes, I can do it. Get moving, Catherine. When he glanced over his shoulder, she had disappeared. Good. No arguments. Just Catherine acting with her usual logic and efficiency. One of them had to stop Black and get the job done. He swam harder, faster, fighting the cold. Block it out. He had to get to the other side. Kara was almost to the top of the hill, Black noticed. She was out in the open, and the moonlight shone on her like a pale spotlight. Black could see her scrambling desperately, slipping on the rocks, falling, picking herself up and running again. The child had more stamina than he had thought she possessed. Perhaps it was only fear that had seemed to paralyze her and made her appear less than she was. And if Black could see her so well, then she would be clearly visible to Gallo and Eve Duncan if they were anywhere near. Perfect bait, he murmured. You're doing well, Kara. That desperation is enough to wrench the heart. How could they resist? He moved farther behind the huge boulders. His rifle was loaded and ready. Again, not his preference. He carried other weapons, a pistol, 2 knives. But a rifle would be safer with Gallo. Was he still wary of Gallo? Nonsense. It was just smarter to handle the kill this way. He would take his time and use one of the knives on little Kara later. It would be enough. That idea would horrify Eve Duncan, he thought with amusement. Come save her, Eve, as you failed to save your own child. Come on, Gallo. Watch the little one struggle and fight for life. His finger poised over the trigger as he watched the path. But hurry, I'm getting impatient. Oh God, I see her, Eve said in agony. Poor child. Desperation and panic were in the little girl's every movement. But where's Black? He has to be here. Somewhere close. Gallo's gaze was raking the terrain and waiting for us. Don't move. We have cover on that path. We have cover on the path at this point, but we'll be wide open if we go another 30 yards. Damn it, where's Catherine? She said that she could tell us where. Don't curse the bearer of the Celtic. Catherine had suddenly appeared out of the shrubbery to the left of the path. She was dressed in black pants and shirt and looked lean and graceful and totally competent. She caught sight of Kara and inhaled sharply. Bait. He's taking her out. That's obvious. Gallo glanced at her, then looked back at the top of the hill. You're Catherine Ling. I've heard a good deal about you. Eve thinks you can work minor miracles. I suggest you start. You don't have the right to tell me what to do, Catherine said coldly. It's because of you that Eve is in this mess, and that kid up there is on the verge of getting killed. Catherine, Eve said, can you locate Black? Yes, I should be in tower range, and I'll bet he's close enough. Catherine pulled out the cell tech. Come on, she murmured. Find the bastard. She pressed the button. The beeper went off immediately. Then the small screen lit up with coordinates and squared an area. Jackpot, Catherine whispered. The boulders. He's behind the boulders. Eve's gaze flew to the 4 huge boulders blocking the path. Steep incline on one side, falling to the lake. Open terrain on the other, where Kara was climbing. There's no way to get to him. There's a way, Catherine said slowly. Just not for us. We have to hang tight. What the hell are you talking about? Gallo said roughly. You stay here. I'll go off the path in the shrubs until I run out of cover. Then take off after the kid. You give me protective fire until I can grab her and get her behind that stand of trees. Too risky, Catherine said. Hang tight. We'll have a chance if... Gallo! It was Black shouting. I'm tired of waiting for you. I know you're out there. Perhaps you need a little encouragement. A bullet caused the rocks to splinter 2 feet from where Kara was climbing. She looked back with panic and frantically tried to climb faster. The next bullet will hit her heel. It will probably take her foot off. Do you want to see that, Eve? No, Eve shouted. Don't shoot her, Black. She turned to Gallo. You go after her the way you said. I'll go up the path and try to distract him. Come on, Black called, and bring Gallo with you. I was disappointed that I was going to have to use a rifle. This will be much better. I'll go slow, Eve said. I'll talk to him on the way. Get to her, John. Catherine was cursing. Damn it, Stoll, don't do this. No choice, Eve said. He meant what he said. I'm not going to let him blow off body parts while we watch. Go, John. Once she's safe, we can go after Black. Son of a bitch. You're right. No damn choice. John ducked into the shrubbery and was gone. Eve, listen to me. I know you're frantic about the kid, but there's another chance too. She shook her head. But I don't know if it will be in time. If you get a shot, take it, Catherine. Eve started down the path. She shouted, Hold your fire! I'm coming, Black. Gallo doesn't think Kara is important enough, but I do. Maybe after you have me, you'll be able to persuade him. Oh, yes, I can be very persuasive with your kind of collateral. Keep on talking to him, Eve, Catherine said curtly. Stoll, Joe should be here any time. Joe. Eve stopped on the path as shock seared through her. What are you talking about, Catherine? Joe? Eve Duncan had stopped in the middle of the path and was looking back over her shoulder. Black saw, annoyed. What was happening? Was Gallo trying to talk her out of coming? I mean it, Gallo, he shouted. Don't play with me. Maybe I should blow off your lady's foot instead of the kid's. I'm aiming right now. But you'll never pull the trigger. His head jerked around to see the man who'd spoken crouched on the rock behind him. He received a wild mixture of impressions as the man jumped him. Bare-chested, barefoot, brown hair, plastered and damp. Then he was knocked to the ground, and the attacker was on top of him and jerking the rifle out of his hand. It went off as he threw it to one side. Black was cursing as he reached for his knife in his arm holster. Who the hell are... But he knew who he was. Quinn. His knife plunged up at Quinn's abdomen. Son of a bitch, how did... Quinn grabbed his wrist and twisted the knife to one side. Give up, Black. I don't want to kill you yet. You have questions to answer. Black kneed him in the groin and rolled out from underneath him. I'm not going to die, Quinn. I'm never the one who dies. The edge of his knife tore across Quinn's upper arm. I'll kill you all. The hell you will. Quinn's knife sliced down and entered Black's chest. Black shrieked. Quinn sat back on his heels, his breath hard, harsh. His eyes were glittering wildly in his set face. Don't die. I was careful. That shouldn't have been fatal. I won't have you dead. I still have a use for you. Eve tore around the boulder and stopped short. Joe was sitting beside Black, covered in blood. Joe's blood? Joe, she whispered. My God. Stay away from him, Joe said. He's not dead yet, and the Viper can kill you with his dying strike. To hell with him. She came forward anyway. All that blood. A lot of mine. Most of it is his. Where? Arm. He bent over Black. You stay awake. You keep alive, damn it. Oh, I'm alive. Black's voice was hoarse, vicious. His eyes were glaring up at Joe. She's soft. She won't let you kill me. I will kill you. It's only a matter of time. Joe turned to Eve and said fiercely, But he can't slip away yet. I won't let him. Joe! Catherine had come around the rocks. Her gaze went immediately to Black. Good job, but you should have finished him. She glanced back at Joe. Do you need any help? Not now. Then I'm going up the hill and grab that poor kid and bring her down. Eve can take care of you. She turned and disappeared behind the rocks again. Eve took another step closer to Joe. Let me... No, I don't need you to take care of me. Joe's eyes were boring into Black's. All I need is for you to listen while this bastard talks to me. It has to end. We both have to be free. He's going to tell me where he buried Bonnie, or I'll start cutting him to pieces. Bonnie? Black was gazing up at him maliciously. You want to know where Bonnie is? Screw you, Quinn. You like making people hurt, don't you? That kid up on the hill, her mother? Joe put the point of the knife at his throat. You want pain? I'll show you pain, Black. Joe. He didn't take his gaze from Black. You've got to know, Eve. He's got to tell you. Where's Bonnie? Black spit in his face. Phew. Where? Joe didn't move the knife to wipe away the spittle. Let me have him. Eve hadn't realized that Gallo had come and was standing a few yards away. His expression was as grim and savage as Joe's. No, perhaps more savage. He'll talk to me. Gallo. Black's gaze was glittering with ferocity. I've been waiting a long time for you. Were you so afraid of me that you had to send Quinn to do your dirty work? Shut up, Black. Gallo's voice was almost guttural. I just came from seeing what you did to Judy's daughter. She's so terrified, Catherine couldn't get near her. She's like a wild animal. But that was the purpose, Black said. The hunt wouldn't be nearly as entertaining if she wasn't sufficiently primed. Joe stabbed him in the throat. Blood ran. Black flinched and began to curse. Where did you bury Bonnie? Joe was ignoring everything around him but his one objective. Tell us, Gallo said. Uneasiness had suddenly supplanted the mockery in Black's gaze as it flew to Eve. Torture? Aren't you going to stop them? Did you stop when you killed all those children? Eve said unevenly. Did you stop when you killed Bonnie? I want to bring my daughter home. Tell me where you buried her after you killed her. His lips curled. Bitch. Gallows bitch. I should have killed you when I had the chance. You and your Bonnie and... He broke off with a cry as Joe's knife bit down again. Okay, take him away. I'll talk to you. Get off him, Joe, Eve said. Joe had already swung off Black and moved a few feet away. Not for long. Black was staring malevolently at Eve even as he scooted back. He doesn't like to hear the truth. But you were Gallo's bitch, and now you're that bastard Quinn's bitch. All of this is your fault. I wish I had... No! Joe had made a motion toward him. He scrambled further away from him. You want to know about Bonnie? I'll tell you about her. Such a pretty little girl. Different. I was practically salivating when I first saw her after I followed Gallo to your place. But the job I was being paid for was Gallo. I couldn't move on her. But you did move on her later, Gallo said. Admit it. You'd like that, wouldn't you? Black said softly. You want the bitch to hear it. I have to hear it, Eve said. What difference does it make to you? You're probably proud that you did it. Isn't that what you're all about? The killing and savagery and... Yes, I'm proud of my power. He smiled, and his gaze never left Gallo. And I have no need of Bonnie Duncan's death to add to it. I don't have to take credit for her anymore. Queen isn't alive to pay any longer. Gallo went rigid. What are you saying? He asked hoarsely. What do you think I'm saying? Black asked. The truth, Gallo. Isn't it time? And what is the truth, Black? Eve asked. I don't know where your Bonnie is buried, Black said. I didn't kill her. Liar, Gallo said. Am I? He shook his head. You're not going to be able to convince anyone of that. His gaze darted to Eve. Don't you know? Don't you want to know who did kill her? I find I can't wait to tell you. Eve moistened her lips. Who? Gallo. Gallo made a low exclamation and lunged forward. Joe jumped up and stepped in front of him. Stay where you are. I want to hear this. Gallo did it. A fit of madness. One of his blackout periods. Queen said he was always having them. Black's words were coming fast, tipped with venom. He came back to Atlanta after Pakistan. He killed her. No, Gallo said. I didn't. I wouldn't. You did kill her. Can't you all see it? Look at Gallo's face. They were looking at Gallo's face, and what Eve saw there stunned her. Anger, fear, torment. Shit! Stop! Gallo's gaze was the only one focused on Black, and he tried to push Joe aside. His boot! He's going for! But Black had already retrieved a dagger from his boot holster and staggered to his feet. Joe half-turned, but it was too late. Black's dagger sank into Joe's back. Eve screamed. Joe was staggering back, slowly falling to his knees. Oh, God! Eve ran forward and sank to her knees in front of him, trying to hold him. No, it couldn't be happening. No, Joe! Black was running for the rifle on the ground a few yards away. He didn't reach it before Gallo was on him. Gallo's arm went around his neck, jerking it back. Say it's a lie, you bastard. You did it. He was straining to get the rifle. You know you. Gallo's arm tightened and twisted, breaking Black's neck. He fell to the ground dead. Eve. Eve was hardly aware that Gallo had spoken. She was carefully laying Joe on the ground. Her fingers were checking the pulse on his throat. Alive. Relief surged through her, but unconscious, going into shock. The blood pouring from his chest. How long would he stay alive? Eve. Gallo was beside her now. I need to. She ignored him as she reached for her phone and called Catherine. Joe's hurt. We're going to need an air ambulance. I hope he doesn't die before it gets here. Come and help me. She hung up. Let me help you, Eve. She didn't look at him. You can't help me. She was trying to stop the blood. I can't even look at you right now. I'll deal with you later. Pressure. She had to apply pressure. But what if the blade had torn an organ? You think I killed her? I think Black was telling the truth, she said unevenly. Gallo was silent for an agonized moment. So do I. When she glanced up, he was gone. It was all a hideous nightmare. Oh, Joe, why did you come? I knew it would happen. Why didn't you let me go? Eve, Catherine dropped to her knees beside Joe. I should have stayed. I shouldn't have left you to go after Kara. She was examining the wound. It's bad. I know, Eve whispered. I don't know how bad. Neither do I. I called for help, but I don't know how long they'll be. We need bandages, blankets. We have to get him warm. He's still wet from the lake. He swam the lake? He would have swum the Atlantic to get to you. She took off her jacket and wrapped it around Joe. I'm going to hike to the cabin and get some supplies. I have to take Kara with me and tuck her in there until the ambulance comes. She's waiting on the path. I would have been here sooner, but I had to coax her into coming with me. She was like a frightened animal. She's sort of shell-shocked, but I was finally able to convince her she was safe now. She jumped to her feet. I'll be back before you know it. I'll know it. She was stripping her own jacket off to help form a makeshift blanket. Why did you do it, Catherine? Why bring him here? Blame me if you like, but he wasn't going to have it any other way. I could at least keep an eye on him if he was with me. I did what I thought best. She looked down at Black. Joe killed him? Gallo. Where is Gallo? Gone. Why did... You can tell me about it later. I have to get to that cabin. Eve didn't watch her leave. Her gaze was on Joe's face. She lay down beside him, her hand keeping pressure on the wound while she cuddled close to try to share her body heat. You're going to be fine, Joe, she whispered. You can't leave me. You've got to get well and strong and let me tell you how much I love you. No, that's all from me. Get well so that you can live life to the fullest. Be what you want. Take what you like. He didn't stir. Was he growing colder? Panic was rising, and she held him tighter. Live, Joe. Hold on. St. Joseph's Hospital, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Open your eyes. Coffee, Catherine said. Eve opened her eyes and straightened in the waiting room chair. She took the styrofoam cup. Thanks. Though maybe I shouldn't have bothered you if you were dozing. Catherine sat down beside Eve. You've been living in this room for almost 2 days. I wasn't dozing. I just wanted to close everything out for a while. Stark, shining corridors, doctors, nurses, worried family members. Joe and ICU. Death hovering, ready to reach out and take him. No word yet? Catherine asked quietly. Eve shook her head. Still critical. They don't know whether he's going to live or not. Her hand clenched on the steel arm of the chair. I know. He can't die, Catherine. Not for me. Not because I won't let my Bonnie go. He's so strong. He should live to be an old, old man. If I hadn't come into his life, he would have. We all make choices. Catherine took a drink of her coffee. Joe chose you. He didn't regret it. The first time I saw you with him, I realized you had something special together. If there were bad times, then he thought the good times balanced them out. That's all anyone can ask. No, it isn't, Eve said fiercely. You can ask for the best, the ultimate, if you care about someone. That's what Joe should have. Then she wearily leaned back against the wall. But I couldn't give it to him. Your coffee is getting cold, Catherine said. Stop all this emotion and drink it. You need the caffeine if you're going to spend any more time here. That was like Catherine, Eve thought. Blunt, authoritative, cut to the chase. but on occasion she could be as warm and comforting as a hand-stitched blanket passed down through loving generations. Lord, she was glad she'd had Catherine beside her for the last few days. She lifted her cup to her lips and tasted it. "It's not cold yet?" she asked. "How is Kara?" "Short term, fine. No physical damage, but a few scratches. I hired a nice motherly woman who had nursing experience to take care of her in a small house near St. Louis County Hospital. Judy Clark is getting better, and Kara will be able to go see her mother every day. I think that's what she needs," she grimaced. "Long term, who knows? She's going to have nightmares for the rest of her life, thanks to Black. Love can do a lot to heal wounds. I'll bet on Judy Clark to bring her through this." She didn't speak for a moment. She took another sip of coffee. "Have the police found Gallo yet?" "No. It's as if he disappeared off the face of the earth." She paused before saying, "You haven't spoken about Gallo since the first day we got Joe to the hospital. I didn't know how you were feeling, so I didn't want to push you. Is there anything you didn't tell me?" "I will find him, Eve." "No, I told you that he as much as confessed to killing Bonnie." She looked down into her cup. "A fit of madness," Black called it. "I don't think John even remembered it." Then the rage returned, sweeping reason aside. "But how could he not remember? It was Bonnie." She fought to control herself. She was on the edge of spiraling into an emotional tailspin about Joe, and she didn't need thoughts of Gallo to push her over. "I didn't want to believe it." "Isn't that stupid?" she said unevenly. "Yet there have been so many times that I realized he wasn't. For God's sake, he even told me he had moments of madness. I just couldn't connect it with Bonnie, not after I grew to know him better. And he managed to con you. I can see how he would be able to do that." Catherine frowned. "But why would Quinn bribe Black to take the blame?" Eve rubbed her eyes, trying to think. It was hard to concentrate on anything but Joe. "Let's see. Gallo was unstable. If he'd found out that he'd killed his own daughter, he might have broken down and gone ballistic. He knew too much, and Quinn had to maintain at least minimal control of him. He didn't want Gallo thrown into an asylum where he'd probably spill everything. So he set up Black as the patsy for John to blame and hunt down. It was safe as long as Quinn kept Black just out of John's reach. But then there was a glitch, and Black and Gallo were brought into firing range of each other." Catherine nodded. "It makes sense." She glanced at Eve. "And you're angry as hell." "Yes, and I'll be more angry when I can manage to feel more than token emotions for anything but Joe. I'm pretty much on automatic right now." She took another sip of coffee. "I felt sorry for him. I think I wanted to help him. He made me feel, I don't know, or maybe I can't explain. It all had to do with Bonnie. But that's all gone now. I hope it is. I can't be sure. But it doesn't matter if it is or not." Her voice hardened. "The anger is stronger. The sense of outrage is overwhelming. The bitterness. I can't even tell you about that. I'll be able to do what I have to do. Forget it. Just focus on Joe. I told you I'll find Gallo." Her lips tightened. "And if he's as good as Quinn said, he may be too much for me to bring him back to you alive. Wouldn't that be just too bad?" "Yes, it would. You've done enough for me, Catherine. Just find him. That's all I ask." Eve finished the coffee. "Caffeine fix accomplished. Are you satisfied?" "For the time being. Now what else can I do for you?" Eve smiled crookedly. "You mean besides killing Gallo and laying him on my doorstep?" "I meant what I said, Catherine." "I know you did." She paused. "And have you forgiven me for bringing Joe with me to Gallo's property that night?" Don't be idiotic. I knew you couldn't stop him. If you hadn't brought him, he'd have found another way," she added. "And there is something else you can do for me. My daughter, Jane McGuire, is flying into Milwaukee in a few hours. Will you pick her up and get her settled, then bring her here to the hospital?" I expected her to be here for this. I didn't want to tell her about Joe while he was in surgery. She couldn't do anything, and I wanted to give her good news when I told her, but there wasn't good news. Her voice was starting to break, and she had to stop and steady it. "He's still in that damn ICU, and he won't wake up." "Eve," Catherine's hand gently touched her shoulder. "He has a chance. Not a good one. All the doctors think he's going to die. I can tell. You're so damn nice to me." "Yeah, that's a pretty good indication. You think I'm being ridiculous." She sounded that way to herself, too. "Maybe I am. I feel so helpless. They brought in all those specialists, and they can't do anything. Someone should be able to do something. I even called my friend Megan and asked her to send a healer she knows up here. But he's working in Africa right now and wouldn't be able to break away and get here in time." "Healer?" Catherine asked warily. "Some kind of witch doctor?" Eve probably shouldn't have mentioned Megan and the healer, but Megan had confidence in him. That was enough for Eve. "What the hell do I care? As long as he can save Joe, I'd hire a voodoo priest and furnish him with a snake and a doll." She put her cup down on the coffee table. "I'm going to the ICU now. I'm going to go to ICU now. They won't let me go inside. They only allow you a short visit every couple of hours, but I can stand in the hall and look at Joe through the windows." She got to her feet. "They even try to discourage me from doing that for long periods of time. They say it's not good for me, and they don't want another patient." She headed toward the door, as if that would matter. "But they're the ones who take care of Joe. I don't want to cause any disturbance that might take their focus off him." She paused and looked back over her shoulder. "You'll pick up Jane?" "Of course I will. It's British Airlines, 8 p.m. Got it." She stood up. "And it would matter if you get so exhausted you break down. It would matter to me. It would matter to Jane. And it would damn well matter to Joe. So don't do it. We'll get through this." Eve nodded. "I know we will." She didn't know, but she prayed. "Call me if there's any problem with Jane's flight." She walked down the corridor toward ICU. Soon she would be able to see Joe again. He'd be pale and drawn, his features appearing as cleanly carved and beautiful as the visage on a tomb. It would scare her to death, as it always did, to see him like that. That was where she should always be, next to Joe. If God would let him stay with her, and if Joe still wanted her if he did come back, the memory of that last day at the lake house was suddenly before her, her eyes looking down at her as she sat in the swing. "It can't be easy. It's not my nature, but it's my nature to love you." And it was her nature to love Joe. She had reached the ICU and braced herself as she walked slowly to the glass window. "Please be better, Joe. Please be better, Joe. Be awake. At least have more color." "Hello, Miss Duncan." The ICU nurse, Karen Norton, was coming out of the ICU unit. "May I get you anything?" "Yes, permission to go sit with him." She shook her head. "It's not visiting hours." She hesitated, but the doctor said that maybe we should ignore the visiting hours and just let you go to him. Dr. Jarlin wants to talk to you." She stiffened, her heart leaping. "He's better?" The nurse shook his head. "I shouldn't have said anything," she said quickly. "Dr. Jarlin will talk to you." Fear surged through Eve. "You'll talk to me, damn it. He's worse?" The nurse was looking at her with that same sympathy and kindness that struck terror into her heart. Dr. Jarlin will talk to you. I'll call him and tell him that you're concerned. She hurried back toward the nurse's station. Concerned? She was sick with fear. Joe was dying, and they weren't going to be able to save him. That was why they were going to let Eve go to him to say goodbye. She couldn't say goodbye. He had to stay with her. She leaned her head on the plate glass window and closed her eyes. She felt the tears running down her cheeks as the agony flowed through her. Look at him. Surely she'd be able to know, to sense some change. Maybe they were wrong. Doctors didn't know everything. She took a deep breath and opened her eyes. She stiffened in shock. Bonnie, standing by Joe's bed, looking down at him. Her expression, love, perfect love. Why was she here? The fear became terror. To take him away, to ease the transition from this life to the next. No, Bonnie. Bonnie looked across the room at Eve standing behind the glass. She smiled luminously, but then turned back again to gaze down at Joe with that same expression of love. Oh God, what did that smile mean? Could she help him to live, or could she only help him to die? Eve's palms pressed against the cold glass as tension and sorrow tore through her. Joe! The end. Good night, baby Elias.